I was only supposed to paint her fence. Just another odd job, a quick paycheck, and back to my side of town. But then she looked at me and said, "If I were your age, I'd invite you in." And in that moment, something shifted. A simple line, playful on the surface, but it stirred something quiet and unfamiliar inside me. You might think this is a love story, but it's not. It's something softer, more honest. If you've ever crossed paths with someone who saw you before you even saw yourself, this story is for you. Stay with me. And if this touches something buried deep in you, leave a comment. I read every word, and don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this, they find you when you need them most. I wasn't looking for anything that morning, just a quick job, a bit of cash, and something to keep my hands busy. That's kind of how I lived back then. I was 24, living out of a borrowed room in a dusty roadside motel on the edge of Prescott, Arizona. No plans, no roots, just drifting through odd jobs like loose change in someone else's pocket. My buddy Cody called me up the night before. "Hey man, my aunt needs her fence painted. It's a decent stretch, but she'll pay you well. Better than busting tables for tips." I said yes, mostly because I didn't have a reason to say no. The next morning was cool, the kind of crisp you only get when summer's finally given up and autumn starts stretching its arms. I walked through one of those older neighborhoods, big oak trees, porches with rocking chairs, American flags waving slightly in the breeze. Too nice for someone like me, honestly. I was expecting someone's great aunt to answer the door, maybe with curlers in her hair and a tiny dog yapping behind her. But when the front door creaked open, I stopped cold. There she was, mid-30s maybe, long dark hair pulled into a loose braid, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater. Confident, but not loud about it. The kind of calm that only comes after surviving something. "You must be Logan," she said, with a smile that made the air feel warmer than it was. "I'm Evelyn. Cody told me you'd be helping out." I nodded suddenly, unsure what to do with my hands. She looked me over, not in a judging way, more like she was measuring something else entirely. Then she said it. "If I were your age, I'd invite you in." Just like that. Playful. Teasing. She didn't linger, just turned and walked toward the backyard, her voice floating over her shoulder. "Paint and brushes are in the shed. Take your time. I'd rather it be done right than fast." I stood there for a second longer than I probably should have, staring after her. Something about her unsettled me, but not in a bad way. It was magnetic. I had no idea what I was walking into, but suddenly it didn't feel like just another job. I got to work like I always did, head down, brush, and hand blocking out the world. Painting was simple, honest. You could see the progress with every stroke, unlike most things in life. The fence was long, sun-faded, and thirsty for color. Wooden slats stretching along the backyard like an old spine that had weathered too many seasons. I dipped the brush, dragged it slow and steady across the grain, and tried not to think too hard. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of her Evelyn moving behind the kitchen window, sometimes watering plants, sometimes reading on the porch. She never hovered, never interrupted, but she was there, and somehow I felt her more than I saw her. Around an hour and the screen door creaked behind me, footsteps on the gravel. "I figured you might need this," she said, handing me a tall glass of lemonade. I took it, cold, sweating with condensation. "Thanks," I said, wiping my forehead. "You're doing a great job," she added. "Better than I expected." I laughed. "That's good to hear. Don't want Cody thinking I embarrassed him." She smiled just enough to let me know she found that amusing. I work from home, by the way. I edit old manuscripts books most people haven't read in decades. Sounds peaceful, I said, unsure if that was the right word. She shrugged. It has its days. There was a pause, not awkward, but weighty, the kind of silence that doesn't demand to be filled. That's when I noticed her left hand. No ring. I didn't ask. Something told me not to. Maybe it was the way her eyes sometimes looked far past me, like she was watching something from long ago. Or maybe it was just a feeling, the kind you can't name, but you trust anyway. She nodded toward the fence. Take your time. Really? I'm not in a rush. Then she walked back inside. Her pace, unhurried, her presence, lingering behind her like perfume on the air. And I stood there for a moment, longer glass, still in hand, wondering why her voice stayed with me longer than it should have. I didn't know what it was exactly. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flirty. But she made the silence between us feel like a conversation. And I wasn't sure whether that calmed me or unnerved me. By late afternoon, the fence was done. I took a step back and wiped my hands on a rag, admiring the clean lines and even strokes. Not perfect, but solid. Honest work. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, arms folded casually, leaning against the frame like she'd been watching for a while. You did a great job, she said, voice soft and even. Come inside. You've earned something cold. I hesitated, not out of fear, but because something about her presence still made me feel off balance. Not nervous, not uncomfortable, just aware. But I followed her in. Her house smelled like lemon and something old books maybe. The walls were painted in soft grays and warm creams. There were framed black and white photos scattered along a shelf, a man in uniform, a young girl on a beach, a woman laughing in the sunlight. Evelyn in another life. She gestured to the kitchen island and handed me a glass of iced tea. Sit, or don't. No pressure. I sat. She did too across from me. We talked the way people do when they're testing the water, but not afraid of getting wet. I told her about the hostel, about Cody, about how I'd never stayed in one place too long. How plans never seemed to stick with me. She listened, not like most people do, waiting for their turn to speak, but actually listened. I used to be like that, she said quietly, living moment to moment, until life made decisions for me. She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. I wanted to ask more, but didn't. There was a kind of peace in not knowing everything. Then she stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of red wine. Feel like staying a little longer. Her voice wasn't seductive. It wasn't cautious either. It was calm, certain. The way someone offers you a blanket when you're cold, not to impress you, just because you look like you need it. I nodded. Sure. We moved to the living room. The wine was smooth, and the light had shifted just enough to cast a golden hue across the floorboards. We talked less now, not because the conversation had run out, but because silence no longer needed explaining. At one point, she looked at me not with longing, but with clarity, like she saw me completely. Then slowly, she leaned in. The kiss was soft. No rush. No spark of sudden passion. Just warmth. Familiarity. Permission. I kissed her back, not because I wanted something, but because something inside me already felt safe with her. And for a while, we just stayed like that. Quiet. Still. I woke up to the soft hum of a house that had been quiet for years. The sunlight came in, at a low angle, filtering through gauzy curtains that fluttered just slightly in the breeze. I was alone in the bed, the sheets still warm, the air still carrying a trace of her perfume, something floral and faintly nostalgic. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling. I wasn't used to mornings like this. Mornings that didn't demand anything from me. No alarms, no texts, no someone waiting to cash in on my time. Just stillness. I found my jeans folded neatly on the chair, my shirt draped over the edge. Everything exactly where it should be, like nothing had been rushed or regretted. I followed the smell of fresh coffee to the kitchen. Evelyn was already there, standing barefoot, in a soft gray sweater, stirring cream into her mug. She looked up. When she saw me, offered a quiet smile, like this wasn't unexpected. Like this didn't need defining. "Morning," she said simply. "Morning," I replied, voice rough from sleep. She handed me a mug without asking how I took it. I sipped. It was perfect. We stood like that for a while, leaning against opposite counters, saying nothing, letting the silence work for us instead of against us. No awkward glances. No fumbling for explanations. Eventually, I set the mug down. "I should get going," I said. She nodded, didn't try to stop me. "Thanks for the fence," she said softly, almost like it meant something more. I smiled. "Thanks for the wine." Neither of us moved toward each other. There was no dramatic goodbye, no lingering touch, just a shared understanding that whatever last night was, it had been real. And that was enough. As I stepped outside, the air felt cooler, crisper. The sky was bluer than I remembered. Or maybe I just noticed it for the first time in a while. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel clarity either. Just a strange calm. Like something had settled inside me. A few days passed. I kept busy, picked up a landscaping job, helped a guy move some furniture out of a storage unit, but Evelyn stayed on my mind more than I cared to admit. One night, Cody and I were drinking beers behind the motel, sitting on cinder blocks, like we had a front row seat to the stars. "You seem off," he said, cracking open another can. "Something happened with the fence job." I hesitated. "Your aunt?" "Evelyn. She's different." Cody gave me a look. "Yeah. She's been through a lot." I waited, hoping he'd keep talking, and he did. She was married to this guy, a pastor of all things, but the kind that uses scripture like a sword, controlling, cold, real hard on her and the kid. "What happened?" I asked, even though I already felt the weight in my chest. "He died 2 years ago. Heart attack, I think. But the damage was already done. Her daughter, she doesn't talk to her anymore, blames her for leaving. It's messy." I nodded slowly, staring into the dark. All at once, the pieces started fitting. The way Evelyn spoke carefully, like every word had once been used against her. The quiet sadness that hung just behind her eyes. The photos in her house, always someone else in the frame, never her alone. She hadn't just lost a husband. She'd lost a whole version of herself. And maybe that's why she moved the way she did, graceful but guarded. Maybe that's why her silences felt full instead of empty. It wasn't distance I felt from her. It was weight. And suddenly I didn't want to chase her. I didn't want to fix her. I just wanted to understand her. I didn't plan to go back. Not really. I told myself I just happened to be walking through that part of town, that maybe I was looking for a shortcut or a familiar view. But my feet knew where they were going long before my head caught up. I stood outside Evelyn's gate for longer than I cared to admit. Part of me worried she'd think I wanted something, that I was showing up for more than she was willing to give. I knocked anyway. She opened the door, wearing a simple blouse and jeans. Her hair was tied back loosely, and she had that look again, soft, unreadable calm. "Logan," she said, surprised, but not unsettled. "Hey," I offered. I was nearby. Thought I'd say hi. She didn't ask questions, just stepped aside and said, "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table. No wine this time, just 2 glasses of iced tea, sweating gently between us. The conversation started slow, like warming up old vinyl. But eventually, it found its rhythm. We talked about small things, bad diners, strange neighbors, books neither of us had finished. Then, without warning, it deepened. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, looking at her glass like it held something heavier than ice. "You know," she said, "I spent a lot of years pretending to be okay. Because that's what strong women do, right? We keep the house clean, keep our voices low, keep going, even when something inside us has already stopped." I didn't interrupt. I didn't nod. I just listened. Sometimes, she continued, I don't want advice, or a solution, or someone trying to fix me. I just want quiet company, someone to listen, and let the silence sit where it needs to. I said the only thing that felt honest. "I can do that." She looked up at me, then really looked, and for the first time, I saw something unguarded in her expression. Not sadness, not hope, just relief. We made dinner together, something simple. Pasta, salad, a rhythm of 2 people who didn't need to perform for each other. After we ate, we stood at the door. She didn't ask me to stay, and I didn't ask if I should. But before I left, she touched my arm. A small gesture, but it stayed with me all the way home. A few days later, I showed up at her door with a handful of wildflowers I picked up from a roadside stand. They weren't wrapped, and I didn't have a clever line to go with them. They just felt right. She opened the door in an oversized cardigan, her hair pulled back in that loose way she always wore it. When she saw the flowers, she raised an eyebrow. For me, she asked, half amused. For the kitchen table, I replied, trying not to sound too serious. She smiled, not the kind that lights up a room, but the kind that lingers quietly, settling into the moment. She took the flowers and held them gently, like they might bruise if she wasn't careful. We sat at the kitchen table again, the bouquet resting in a glass jar between us. The house was quiet. So were we. Then she said it calmly, clearly. "I don't want rules, Logan." I looked up, unsure what she meant. "No expectations," she continued. "No checking in, no keeping score. Just show up when it feels right. Be here when you can. And when you can't, don't explain." It wasn't a test. It wasn't even a challenge. It was just truth. I nodded slowly. Okay, that was it. No contract, no label. Just an understanding. What we had wasn't casual, but it wasn't permanent either. It existed somewhere in between. And in a strange way, it felt more honest than anything I'd ever called a relationship. No pressure, no promises, just presence. And somehow, that was enough. It was a Saturday afternoon when I told her. I had just finished a job across town. My hands still smelled like gasoline and fresh-cut grass. I stopped by Evelyn's place, not to linger, just to say hello. She opened the door, in leggings and an oversized shirt, her reading glasses still perched on her nose. When she saw me, She smiled like she always did, warm, steady, unsurprised. "You look like you fought a lawnmower," she said with a soft laugh. "Might have lost," I replied, stepping inside. We stood in the kitchen like we had a dozen times before. There was nothing different, and yet everything was. "I found a place," I said finally. "It's not much, just a small apartment across town. But it's mine. Cheap old, kinda ugly. But mine." She didn't ask questions, just nodded. "You deserve better than bunk beds and shared showers," she said, her voice kind, not sentimental. I leaned against the counter, unsure what to say next, because we both knew what this meant even if neither of us wanted to say it. Prescott wasn't a big town. But distance isn't just miles. It's rhythm routine, the shape of a day. Moving meant the rhythm would change. The quiet space we had built together, unspoken, undefined, would shift with it. "I probably won't be around this side of town as much," I said. I figured she answered. We were quiet for a while. Then she walked over, placed her hand gently on my chest, right over the part that always felt a little untethered. "That's what made it work, Logan," she said. "We always knew it wasn't forever. I didn't say goodbye. She didn't ask me to. But when I left that day, I knew something had changed. Not broken, just moved. Like the wind shifting direction. No sound. No warning. Just different. I came by one last time. No appointment. No text. Just showed up at the door, like I had so many times before. She opened it slowly, like she already knew it was me. "Thought I might see you," she said. I nodded. Didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. She stepped aside. I walked in. The house looked exactly the same. Same soft light filtering through the curtains, same quiet scent of books and something floral. But there was a stillness in the air that hadn't been there before, like it was holding its breath. We didn't talk much, just stood in the kitchen facing each other, like everything we could have said had already been said in the silences between our visits. She reached out, took my hand in both of hers. Her grip wasn't tight, but it was sure. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing up, for not needing this to be anything more than it was." I looked at her for a long moment, memorizing the lines in her face, the steadiness in her gaze. Then she stepped in close and rested her forehead against mine. Brief, warm grounding. No kiss. No tears. Just presence. When I pulled away, she didn't follow. And I didn't ask her to. We both understood. I walked out the door for the last time, closing it gently behind me. The sun was setting low over Prescott, bathing the street in a soft gold. The air smelled like dry leaves and something fading. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel lost. I felt light. I walked down the quiet street with my hands in my pockets, watching the world shift gently around me. And as I turned the corner toward whatever came next, one thought stayed with me. I walked away. But something stayed. Not every connection needs a name. Not every goodbye means something is lost. Sometimes the most honest kind of love is the one that never asks to be called love. It just exists quietly, respectfully, in the space between two people who needed each other exactly when they met. Evelyn didn't fix me, and I didn't save her. But we gave each other something real, something unspoken, a safe place to land, even if just for a little while. There's a kind of magic in letting something be what it is without forcing it to be more, and a kind of maturity in walking away not because you're tired or broken, but because you know it's time. She reminded me that presence matters more than promises, that sometimes just showing up is enough. And now, when I think of her, when I think of that house, that fence, that quiet kind of warmth, I don't feel sad. I just feel grateful. So if you've ever shared a moment with someone that defied labels, if you've ever had to walk away from something that felt right but wasn't meant to last, then maybe like me you'll understand. The most meaningful connections aren't always the loudest or the longest. Sometimes they're just the ones that change you. Maybe you've had a moment like mine. Maybe it was years ago, or maybe it's something you're still holding on to now. A person, a glance, a quiet goodbye that never quite left you. If any part of this story reminded you of someone or something you once felt, drop a comment below. You don't have to explain it. Just say, I understand. Because sometimes that's all we really need. To know we're not the only ones carrying quiet memories. And if stories like this speak to you, if you believe there's power in the soft, the subtle, the real, then hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories like this waiting for you. Don't forget to turn on the bell, because the next story might feel like yours too.